There is a very specific fear that lives in the lifting world. It's not about injury or age or even plateaus. It's cardio. Say the word conditioning around some lifters and you can feel the room tense up a little bit. Shoulders rise, jaws clench, somewhere a barbell gets hugged protectively. Because in lifting culture, conditioning has been framed as betrayal. As if the moment you do something that elevates your heart rate for longer than a heavy set, your muscle fibers pack their bags and leave. And look, I get it. I get where this is coming from. A lot of conditioning can and will ruin your lifts, but not because conditioning is bad, because most people add it without understanding what it costs, what it supports, and what direction it actually points them towards. Let's clear up something very early. Conditioning is not the opposite of strength. Poorly chosen conditioning is. An engine is supposed to support your output, not steal from it. If your conditioning makes your lifts worse over time, it didn't earn its place in your training, it freeloaded it. Here's a mistake most lifters make. They think conditioning exists to, say, burn calories, get lean, punish themselves, or just balance things out. And none of those reasons are a lifter should care about conditioning. A lifter needs conditioning for one reason and one reason only: to recover faster between efforts, between sets, between sessions, between weeks. If your engine cannot support repeated force production, strength will become more fragile. It shows up once and then disappears. That's not strength, that's your party trick. Let's dive into some physiology for just one moment. When you lift heavy, especially with intent, you're going to tax your nervous system, local muscular energy stores, metabolite clearance pathways, and connective tissue recovery. If your conditioning is appropriate, it will improve your blood flow, your substrate delivery, your waste removal, and parasympathetic rebound, which means you will recover faster without lifting less. Your conditioning is only inappropriate if it competes for your recovery resources, joint tolerance, and neural freshness. Because that's when lift starts feeling flat and people start blaming cardio like it stole their lunch money. So the real question lifters should be asking is not, should I do conditioning, but what kind of conditioning supports the version of strength I'm trying to keep? That's a compass question. Because every conditioning choice moves you towards something and away from something else. And pretending it's all the same is how people sabotage themselves while insisting they're being disciplined. So let's talk about some of the bad conditioning for lifters first, because this is where most of the horror stories really come from. The classic example is high volume, high impact, steady state conditioning layered on top of heavy lifting. That means your long runs, endless circuits, daily grinders, conditioning that feels impressive but never quite lets you feel recovered ever again. This kind of conditioning will eat into your recovery bandwidth, increase joint stress, compete with strength adaptation, and teaches the body to downregulate force. It's not evil. It just points the compass away from maximal output and toward endurance dominance. If your goal is to lift heavy and feel good doing it, that is the wrong direction. And then there's the other extreme, no conditioning at all, which works until it doesn't. This is the lifter who can move big weight for 1 or 2 sets, but needs 10 minutes to feel human again. Breathing is wrecked, heart rate stays elevated, everything feels dramatic. That's not peak strength, that's a weak engine carrying a strong chassis. Eventually something will give. And then there's the middle ground most lifters miss, where conditioning that is low skill, low impact, repeatable, recoverable, and boring enough to be honest. Conditioning that exists to make the next set better, not to win a suffering contest. And that's where strength actually really benefits. Let's talk some specifics about that. What conditioning should lifters do? Good conditioning should shorten rest needed between sets, improve work tolerance without stealing some strength, reduce systemic fatigue from lifting, and make sessions feel less chaotic. If it doesn't do at least one of those, it's probably just noise. So the best conditioning modalities for lifters is going to be something. This is where lifters get suspicious. So let's be clear for a second. No, I'm not going to turn you into a runner. Relax for a second. The goal is not endurance identity. The goal is simply engine support. We're going to dive into some very basic ones that will help you. Let's look at the first one, sled work. Sleds are criminally underused for a lot of people. They're concentric dominant, low skill, and brutally honest. Sled pushes and drags will improve peripheral circulation, build work capacity. Don't trash joints and don't fry the nervous system. You can do them between your lifting days, after some of your main lifts, or even on some basic recovery rates with low weight. They build an engine without stealing your strength. In some ways, it actually can help some of your strength. Next up is my favorite, of course, loaded carries. I talk about these all the frickin' time for a good reason, but they need to also be done intelligently. Carries get abused, but when done right, they are gold. Short to moderate distance carries will improve breathing under load, reinforce your posture, build trunk endurance, elevate your heart rate without the chaos. The mistake is then turning carries into max effort suffering. Carries should feel like this is uncomfortable, but I could probably do another round. If you are seeing stars, though, you kind of missed and overshot it. Then you have tempo circuits with low load. This is where people panic because they hear circuit. Relax. I'm not talking about flailing here. Think goblet squats, rows, push-ups, hinges. Moderate reps with controlled tempo and minimal rest. Your heart rate's going to rise, your breathing will adapt, strength patterns stay clean. This kind of conditioning teaches the body to clear fatigue without abandoning force. Then the last type of conditioning, zone 2. Yeah, I just said it. Now, before you click away, hear me out for a second. Low-intensity aerobic work will improve your mitochondrial efficiency, recovery between sessions, and parasympathetic tone, which will directly support your strength longevity. Now, that doesn't mean long runs. It could be just simply incline walking, cycling, sled dragging, rucking, done 20 to 40 minutes a couple times a week. It's not going to be sexy at all, but it will work. And if that offends you, that's cultural, not physiological. But there are a lot of workouts you probably should not be doing and why it hurts. Some of these can be high-impact plyo conditioning done frequently, random high-rep barbell circuits, conditioning layer on top of already maximal lifting, and metcons that combine technical lifts under fatigue. These are going to steal strength because of overloading joints, tax coordination, compete with neural recovery, and blur adaptation signals. Again, not evil, just pointing in a different direction. Now, probably going to be asking, well, how do I program this in if I already got a pretty complicated lifting schedule, like 6 days a week? And that's where you start overcomplicating things, and you shouldn't. You don't need a spreadsheet to do this. You need one simple question to answer. Does this make my lifting better in 2 weeks? Not harder, not sweatier, better. If conditioning leaves you recovering faster, breathing calmer, less wreck between sets, it earned its place. But if it leaves you flat, sore, constantly tired, mentally fried, it didn't. So a simple approach that works for a lot of people is going to be 2 to 3 conditioning exposures per week of low impact, submaximal effort, and consistent modalities. That means doing the same thing more than one time a week. Think supporting, not domination. And that's where the compass quietly shows up in all this. Because if you're choosing conditioning that supports recovery, improves repeatability, and keeps output available, you're pointing towards your durable strength. But if you're choosing conditioning that feels hardcore and feeds your ego and competes for recovery, you're going to be pointing somewhere else, and probably neither makes you a bad person, but only one really keeps your lifts intact. All right, let's land this plane. Conditioning is not betrayal, it's insurance. Insurance against long sessions, accumulated fatigue, aging, stress you didn't plan for. Strength that depends on perfect conditions doesn't last. Strength with an engine really does. And if your conditioning ruins your lifts, it was not conditioning, it was just misdirection. So choose what works that supports your output and not steals from it. It's not selling out. That's training like you plan to be here for a while.